and welcome back to my channel. So today I have another Sims 4 speed build for you, and I'm actually really excited about this one. When I started it, I really had no idea what I was trying to do. I originally started trying to do like a small row house, but then I just made it bigger and all of a sudden it became essentially a mansion. It's huge. But I think it's going to be an awesome family home. So there's room for 2 kids, a set of parents, and a lot of things to do, skill building activities. There's even a pool in the backyard. I mean, it's pretty luxurious, if I do say so myself. It is pretty pricey. It did come out to be about 175,000 simoleons. This may actually be the most expensive build I've ever made in The Sims, possibly outside of that giant apartment complex that I've been working on my channel. If you haven't seen that, I suggest checking that out. That's probably going to be super expensive once I actually finish all the apartments and upload it in its entirety up to the Sims 4 gallery. I'm looking forward to actually seeing how much that one costs. But anyways, this one I just kind of started doing stuff and then it just kind of morphed into what it is. I don't know if you've had that experience where you just I feel like building and I don't exactly know where this is going, but here we are. And so this one actually ends up having 3 balconies. And it's actually kind of funny. Later on, you'll see me when I start doing the inside, I decide to actually create kind of a opening to the second floor from the first floor in the entranceway, which I was so excited about, but I was totally neglecting the fact that I had a balcony right there. So later on in the build, you'll see me building and all of a sudden I'm going to have the realization that there is a door to nothing inside the house. But don't worry, I fix it and it is still a functional balcony. I thought about just leaving it as an architectural thing and then just your Sims can't get to it, but I thought that was not as fun. So I did find a way around it. I did go back and forth on the color scheme, but I do end up basically going into this black, white, and gray aesthetic, which I think ended up really nice. It was kind of on the slightly modern side on the inside. Maybe it had been upgraded a little bit. I feel like maybe this house was a little bit older, but the owners did a lot of work to it, but it still got a cozy feel. It's not super modern, all concrete and metal and stuff like that, but it ends up being pretty cozy. I actually end up putting in a driveway in the front too, which again, I just think it's funny when I do that because The Sims don't actually have cars, so they can't actually use them. But I did take them out of debug, so they actually look pretty decent, I think. And then I'm just using some stone here and then trying to add some columns. I do swap them for a simpler looking column, but I do use those throughout the build, including inside as an architectural touch. And I do end up having to, when I go back to actually edit that balcony so that the Sims can actually get to it, I end up having to alter the outside a little bit. I put a little pergola actually in the backyard, but I end up having to do that over all of the balconies. You'll see me do that at the very end of the build when I realize that I'm having some trouble with some of that white trim. I don't know what happened when I created that little walkway to actually access that balcony, but it just did some weird stuff. It kind of did whatever it wanted to, which I feel happens sometimes. And I feel the bigger the build, the more likely you are to actually run into this issue of actually having to change what you originally had because it just starts doing weird things. If you know what I mean. And I end up just using some gravel. I thought that looked kind of nice and just a really clean, simple front yard. I didn't actually put a lot in the front or backyard for kids. However, there is a lot of stuff inside of the house. I have a set of bunk beds and there's one kid room, but there's a lot of stuff to do in there. The chemistry set's in there. There is a computer in the house, and I also have the scouting board, which is, kind of like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever. So your kids will have something to do, as well as, of course, bookcases. I actually put, believe it or not, a piano, and not the little electronic one. I put a big grand piano in this house, which I never use because they are so big. I wish we had just a stand-up piano so that you can actually use it more often and it looks better than the electronic keyboard. I feel that kind of stand-up piano is a lot more common just in normal homes. I had one growing up. but I actually didn't play. My sister did. That wasn't really my thing, but I feel like it's realistic to have that versus like having a grand piano or a baby grand piano, which I think is just a little bit smaller than a grand piano, but still huge, and most people don't have room for it. But this house does, which is really exciting. And I also included a laundry room, which we'll see a little bit later. And I was excited about the backyard because I ended up having this really awesome entertaining space, and I did like a sunken like sitting area. So I think that turned out really nice. So we'll end up putting a grill in there with like counters too. And of course, I mean, the house is so like large and fancy looking, I had to include a pool back here. And we do end up like fencing it off and putting some more bushes and vegetation back here. But I actually like some of my other builds, and I do like to put a lot of like flower beds and things like that in my builds, but I kept it really simple with this house. Like I felt like they would have a really refined like landscaping, if that makes sense. So it's mostly just some bushes and those couple of trees, and so I don't have like a huge wide variety of flowers, but I think it works really well here. And then we end up just like using mostly the same architectural elements, but I did put the trash can out there, and then I just create walkways to all of those pieces. I didn't really have room to put in like lounge chairs, which, you know, you can add if you would like to download it. And this is available already on the Sims 4 gallery, so you can download that under my ID, Spice and Sprinkles, all lowercase, like all one word, just like my channel name. And that's how it's spelled. But I end up like just kind of making this a gravel area so that your Sims can still get around. And then I tried to put some stairs over there, but I don't know why every time I put stairs, like it changed the terrain. I have no clue why it was doing that. I guess I've never really tried making this kind of architectural feature before, so maybe that was part of the problem. I'm not really sure, but it bugged me, so I took that out and I just kind of scooted that over a little bit so that there was some grass space. And actually, against like what I kind of wanted to do, I did not put a bunch of flowers in that space. I feel like I always do that, but I really try to keep it simple. But I did create like this really nice pergola, and I do put some like vine like flowers up top, which are the same flowers that I put underneath all of the trees. So I just kind of placed them like they might have actually been attached, and also offer some shade, and I think looked really nice. And that's what it ends up looking like on all the balconies on the house, which I think does add a little pizzazz to the front of the build. And you saw me like adjusting the columns. Because I used medium wall height, I felt like it matched this build really well, but that means that I had to adjust all of the columns to match that wall height because I wish it like automatically did it, if that makes sense. Like if it knows you're using like medium wall height, then it would automatically use medium wall height on the columns, but it didn't seem to, so I had to adjust it a lot. I'm sorry if I ended up missing one. If you download it and all of a sudden you kind of have a column that's not actually attached somewhere, I try my best to not miss any of them, but you know, it may have happened just because I do end up using a lot of them inside of the build as well. And I did end up adding some lights to the pool, and I did add some like sprinkler, fountain, water spraying, whatever you want to call them, features to the pool on both sides, because that just feels very like luxurious to me to have those kind of features on your pool, or to have a pool at all really. And then I just added like a bar space, and I do actually end up swapping out some of the counters for a bar. Since there is a bar that matches this counter set, I thought that would be a perfect opportunity to use it. And it took me a little while to decide exactly what I wanted over there. I know I wanted to put a fire pit, but I wasn't sure how I wanted the seating to go, so I kind of mess around a lot with making like a long bench seat across the back, but I don't end up leaving it that way. You can see me kind of messing around with smaller ones, larger ones. How do I want to do this? And so I end up just, you know, keeping it simple, not making it too complicated. And then I end up putting like a plant over in the corner. And for this build, I felt like it was a little refined, so I tried to keep my clutter to a minimum, even though I am tempted to do it in all of my builds. But just adding a few like grill like instruments out here, I guess utensils, I don't know what you call those, like a grill brush, all of that kind of stuff. And then I tried to make sure that the lights that I hung there, and I do use those throughout the build even inside the house, that it actually attached to the pergola. I think I made it work, but I had to keep checking it over and over again to make sure it actually like matched up. And then I thought, I don't actually use fans that often, but I thought it kind of made sense under there with the pergola, like it has somewhere to attach. And, you know, just a really nice thing to have out there, and it just it's just, again, it felt luxurious. So again, keeping with the black and white theme, and because I actually ended up doing all of landscaping outside before the inside, and I don't know, I feel like I change every time I do a build, like what order I do it in, but I was really excited about the outside of this house, so I wanted to go ahead and finish it. And then just adding a little bit of terrain paint underneath all of the bushes and things makes it look, I think, a little more realistic. And then I do end up using those are debug like plants, and I thought they worked really well with this house, so I do use those in a few places, including, I think I put one on 2 of the balconies. So the balcony that's like above the front door is not very large, so I don't put one on it, but on the other ones I do. And then I just have seating on each of those balconies. I thought about adding like an easel to one of the balconies, but I opted not to. But there is an easel actually in this house too, so there's lots for your Sims to do. And I don't know exactly what the Sims do for a living. I like to think about that when I'm building a house, but honestly, I think I kept it a little more generic because I just wasn't sure what I wanted for them. I just know that there's 2 kids in the house and then at least 1 adult, maybe 2. And then there is a lot of space in the house. You could actually create another bedroom on the like stair landing upstairs. I end up like putting like an office space. So you could like close that in and create another bedroom, but I opted not to do that because I just wanted a lot of like different amenities in this house, including an office. And I struggled a little bit with how I wanted to lay out this bottom floor, and I end up like the entrance ends up having like a nice seating area and actually another chair off to the side, so there's lots of space. I think your Sims, like this would be pretty easy for your Sims to get around, and this was me when I took out that huge chunk in the second floor, neglecting to pay attention to the fact that there's going to be a floating door later on. Hopefully you actually get to see it because it's just so funny. I was sitting here and my husband was working on his computer and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? When I went up to finally decorate the second floor, I was like, there is literally just a floating door up here, but it's all right. It got fixed. He's like, you could just take out the door. And I'm like, nah, that would just be too weird. Although I do know that like, you know, you see those like wacky architectural like videos where they're like, what was this person even doing? And you see stuff like that, like a door to nowhere. But I opted not to do that in this house. And I used a lot of just white marble, which is what I used out on the balconies as well. And with that, with a mix of like some gray flooring. And this does have like a full dining room and a very nice kitchen with bar seating. There's tons of room for people to sit, which is kind of funny considering the house really is only for like 4 Sims. But that maybe this like family has a lot of get-togethers or has a lot of extended family, and they host like all of the family holidays and things like that. And there's plenty of space to have like a caterer, a bartender, you know, all of that good stuff to make awesome occasions in The Sims. And I did struggle a little bit, like, you know, only using black, white, and gray, like without it being too repetitive, if that makes sense, like using the same stuff everywhere, like using the same rug, things like that. You know, it started to get harder when I went upstairs. Like, it took me a little bit downstairs, but upstairs it became definitely more difficult, especially in the owner's suite. I ended up actually cutting out a bunch of footage because it took me forever to even get the floor plan for that particular space, like that room. And it just took me forever to do that. And then when it came to like how to decorate it, it took me forever too, because it just, I don't know, none of it made sense. Like it was either too light or it was too dark in there, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out. But I ended up having to like walk away, like stop recording and then come back the next day to work on it again. I don't know if any of you have had to do that, where you're like, okay, I think I need a break, and then coming back, because this actually took me several hours, like definitely more than usual for my other builds, just because it was so large. And I was actually, though, had a good time building it, but like there were definitely times I had to walk away and be like, no, I think I need to like come back and try again. I ended up basically like gutting that owner suite and then like fixing it. But I do end up like putting just like a wall of cabinets and then a huge island, huge island. Like I said, lots of room. I thought originally about putting the like stove in the island itself, but I swap it around and I don't do that, or having like 2 stoves, which I think is kind of funny in The Sims where like, you know, you see those like luxurious houses like in real life where they have like the huge like gas like range, but that's what I try to do when I use like 2 stoves in The Sims. But like realistically, it's not super useful and it kind of sometimes looks weird. But so I ended up not doing it for this one, although I have done it in other builds for sure, and I'm sure I will do it again. But I fell in love with the way those cabinets look, those like tall ones. So I put those in and I scooted the fridge in there. To be honest, like I'm not exactly sure if that will work. If it doesn't, you can just delete the cabinet and it'll be fine. But it kind of looked like one of those fancy built-in fridges, if you know what I mean. If you've ever seen those look just insane. And like I feel like dream house material for me is to have like a built-in fridge like that. But I feel like it would become really complicated because then you have to find fridges that fit. Like what if your fridge breaks and you need to get a new one, and then you have to get like one that's like exact, otherwise it looks weird. Like I feel like that happened at my parents' house. They had like a built-in microwave like into like the cabinets, not just like above their stove, if you've seen those. And like finding a replacement that exact size can be difficult and really expensive, to be honest. But I assume like the Sims that like are living here would have the money to fix it if they needed to. And because it's kind of insane how expensive this house is anyways. I really do need to do like a restricted build on cost, because I feel like I really do like spend a ton of simoleons when I'm actually decorating these homes. But I really do enjoy using just like whatever, since I do have the packs. But it would probably be nice to actually do maybe a base game build, something like that. Although I feel like you could still make an expensive home with base game, because there's a lot of items in base game. So I need to try that sometime. And then for this one, I ended up just using like some wood paneling. I feel like I've been using that a lot recently. I really like it because it gives the walls some interest, like using wallpaper, but without it being like too much, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't add like color, it just adds a nice interest to it. And I felt like, you know, there was an interesting pattern in the dining room, and then you kind of have a break in the kitchen, and then you have some more pattern in the living room. And then for this, I definitely wanted a fireplace, although come to think of it, I didn't put a chimney on the house. That's fine. It doesn't matter. For The Sims anyways, not having a chimney. Maybe it's just an electric fireplace. That's what we'll go with. It's an electric fireplace or gas fireplace. You don't need a chimney. And I do end up like, oh yeah, and I forgot about the chess table too. There's so much for your Sims to do in this house. And I end up using like the same cabinetry that was in the kitchen. I just kind of like brought it along because it looked like it could actually work in multiple places. I did start using Dream Home Decorator stuff for this, but I think I do, end up swapping it out for the stuff that was in the kitchen just because like the color made more sense. Like there wasn't like a swatch in that Dream Home Decorator set that I felt like matched really well, so I had to get rid of it. And I do use mirrors in several places in this build. If your computer has issues like dealing with some of the reflections and things that it creates, you can always take those out. And I know that that recent decor pack, I think it was Decor to the Max is what it's called, has like those frames. Like it looks like that, but just without the mirror. That would be cool too, like swapping that out, and you could put like a strip of wallpaper behind it and it would look like art. I think that would be really cool too. And I actually had a hard time with the couch situation here. I did cut some of that out, but I spent a lot of time kind of messing around with the Dream Home Decorator sectional sofa stuff to see if I could get something to work, but it ended up just being too large for this space, which sounds really silly considering how big the house is. But I do end up just using like a couch and then like 2 chairs instead. I think it was just like trying to round the corner with the couch, it just became a lot. And because it ended up like I wanted to use like the black swatch on it, it just was just really heavy in the room, if that makes sense. So I just used these instead. And then I actually like for the end table, I actually had a really hard time with it. Again, I cut that out because like it just took me so long, but it's cool. It all worked out and I think it looked really nice, but it just took me a minute to do. And then I ended up just putting like a plant over in the corner, and the hanging one, of course, I feel like I'm using that a lot lately too, but I think it has some wonderful swatches on it. And then I end up using that like basket of blankets. Again, I feel like I have certain items that I use all of the time. Like you're almost always going to see some of these. I feel like I need to like try not to use those items. Like I think that would be an interesting challenge too for me, is like don't use these items that you use all of the time, or maybe use the items that like you really dislike in the game, or only using items that you've never used before, which I feel like actually what could help. I found that when I was building this, because I had such a strict color palette that I was working with, I ended up actually sorting items in the catalog by color a lot of times, like black, white, and gray. And that actually helped me find a lot of swatches of things that I've not seen before or I forgot that existed. Like once you have a bunch of items in the game and each of those items has a bunch of swatches, although I could always use more swatches and more items, I would never complain about that. But it just like, you kind of forget what's there. So like sorting by color, I think is a great way to actually see what's there if you have like a color scheme in mind, if that makes sense. And actually, if you are enjoying this build, I would really appreciate it if you like and subscribe if you want to see more like it. And also, if you have any build suggestions or things you want to see, I would love to hear your suggestions, to have some creative like input on what I should be building, because a lot of this is just stuff that I think of, but I think everyone's gameplay is different, so it would be nice to hear what you all would actually like to see or would want to use. And so for this space, we end up actually just adding a laundry room in the bigger half, and then in the smaller half, we end up adding a bathroom. And there are 3 bathrooms in this house. There's plenty of space for all of your Sims, so your Sims aren't going to be competing over who actually gets to like go to the bathroom and shower and things like that. So there do end up being a shower, a bath shower combo. So you could actually add either if you want to have a toddler in this house, you can bathe them, or if you want to have a dog in this house, you can also bathe them as well. I think you can actually bathe toddlers in sinks, but I don't think you can do that with like pets. So you do have that option if you want to add that stuff in there, but I didn't add any here. Because again, I like to visualize like who is living here, and I wasn't sure like if these people would have a pet, if that makes sense. But if you would like to add one, please feel free to do so. And we just adding a bunch of stuff in here. I feel like this is actually a really luxurious laundry room, because like there's just space to like fold and like a sink and everything. Like that would be amazing to have a laundry room like that. I feel like it to actually have all this space, and just, you know, adding some shelving in here, like maybe they just store towels or other things here. And I feel like the storage in this house is fantastic. There is plenty of it, and it is all over the place. And I do actually keep the bathroom pretty simple. I feel like sometimes I put a lot of clutter in there, but I did not for this one. And I actually ended up using the fancier toilet that looks like it has like a bidet built in or something like that. Like maybe like this is something that they would have. And then I do end up putting like a table here, like so you can have like stuff on the side, like some really cool storage, like a really awesome built-in like sink and everything. And just adding a few things, like a little bit of some greenery here. Again, there's not too much of that in this build, but I just felt like it looked really nice here. And then adding a little bit of art, and I do end up using the fuzzy rug. I feel like I use in a lot of my builds. I feel like that would definitely be an item that, like, if I did a build where I couldn't use my favorite items, that would be one of the things I couldn't use. And then just finishing up this little seating area. I feel like this is nice and cozy, like a little nook that you could go read a book. Your Sims have just like lots of space, and like I said, this house has so much seating. Like maybe they just really like entertaining, and like I don't know, I just feel like, who knows, maybe they're a celebrity and like they just have like all of these crazy parties and things like that. But again, keeping this area just kind of simple. Like I wanted to focus on the big stairs that I put here. I don't usually use stairs that large, but it just felt like fitting here. And then I do actually end up bringing this table up into the like loft, like stair landing area, and I put art on it. So maybe they're art collectors. And then just using the mirror that I use in like all of my builds, I end up putting that over here in the corner with a nice chair. Again, just like a cozy area, so just lots of space. And like I'm thinking, like if you actually did have a toddler in this house, that would be kind of difficult, I feel like, possibly, just because there's so many stairs. Since this is medium wall height, I feel like the stairs are just even taller. like I can just imagine like your poor toddler trying to walk up and down the stairs. It would take them 10 years. Like they would starve and be taken away before like they ever got to any food. But we just end up adding like a table here. I was really back and forth on what I wanted to put in this area, but I wanted it to be really open and just like a walkway. So I just added a little table in there, just like a console. Maybe they put like mail or something on it. I don't know. But just adding a plant here. And then this area actually caused me some trouble. So I do end up like swapping those doors out because they just look weird. It just did not look right. Like it just didn't go with the vibe of the house. So I actually swapped those out for those bookcase doors, which I think worked really well because it kind of looked like there were bookshelves on the wall, like, you know, like they weren't random doors there. But this room did take me a while to actually do, and I do actually end up moving that rug. So sometimes when I'm building, like, and I'm like, oh, I want to like try something different, but I don't want to get rid of what I already have. Like I will take the item and put it somewhere else, just out of the way, so I could try something different. And I do that with that rug, just like you saw right there. And I forgot. So if you do download this house, that rug is still there. So you can just easily delete that out. But by the time I had already uploaded it to the gallery and 6 people had already downloaded it when I figured out that I had left it there when I was doing screenshots. So sorry about that, but that's a pretty quick and easy fix. I feel like it's one of those things when you're building and I feel like the bigger the build, the more likely you are to forget things and for things to be kind of weird just because there's so much, and this took me a long time. So over many sessions. So I think I just kind of forgot about it, and I had already finished that area. So I moved on and didn't look at it again because I was so focused. And this was the last thing I did actually downstairs. And then we pop upstairs and try to figure out exactly what we want this to look like, and trying to make up for the fact that I have a floating door to that balcony. But we fixed it and had this really cool, like, I don't know, like walking catwalk kind of area. I don't know what you would call that. I'm sure there is actually an architectural name for it. I just don't know what it is. But at this point, it does something weird when I put the fence in, and it deletes some of that white trim on the outside, which is what causes me to like actually put like a pergola like awning over each of those balconies. So we end up fixing that later on, like at the end when I figure out that happened. And this actually took me a while to do. Like trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this master bedroom and the kid bedroom, like how I wanted to organize that. It took me a minute because I knew I wanted a bathroom in that room, but I was just having a hard time fitting it in and making it look like okay, if that makes sense. And then having only the one window, and I couldn't really move that window because it was on the facade, the front facade of the house, and like I didn't want to mess that up because I spent so long doing it. And I feel like that's one of the things, like if you do the outside of the house before you do the inside, it's like then you kind of force yourself into doing certain window placements, or it might end up looking weird on the outside. But at the same time, if you decorate the inside and just put the windows wherever it looks good on the inside, then it looks weird on the outside. But I guess real houses, they end up just kind of doing whatever they want anyways. Because, you know, you've seen those houses where you're like, where did those windows come from? Or maybe it looks normal on the front, but the rest of the house, you're like, this just looks chaotic. Like, I think that's kind of what happens in real life. They just kind of make the front look nice and then just like do whatever. But we do end up like on the side, that ends up being like that little office space. And then I do end up like adding these columns. Like I said, if there are columns that aren't quite the right height, you can just easily adjust them with that little arrow that pops up. And then I just made another cozy area for your Sims to kind of hang out and have their own space. Like I feel like there's a lot of space in this house. Like each Sim could take a corner of the house and be like perfectly content and like on their own. And then just adding like a movie poster, and we add like another like big one over near the other side of the second floor. And so maybe they are a celebrity here, hosting big parties and things like that. Or maybe there's just a movie buff. I don't know. And this office space, like I really like the idea of being able to like look over and like see down. But then I'm thinking like realistically in real life, like it'd be kind of funny because I don't know, like your pencil rolls off your desk and falls off and like hits someone below that's sitting in that seating area, or like, and so it's just funny to me, like thinking about just stuff falling off. But at least in The Sims, we don't have to worry about it. But, you know, I think about those kind of things when I'm building. Like, this is not what I would maybe necessarily do in my own home for, like, you know, danger purposes. But, it, you know, it works in The Sims. and then just adding a little bit of clutter. And I do end up adding like a case file, like from the detective career on the desk, because I just thought it looked like some cool paperwork to have there. So who knows, maybe a Sim's a detective. Like there's a lot of options, I think, for the Sims here, and just lots of skills and hobbies and things like that. So I feel like it's a very versatile house, which not all of my houses are. Like sometimes they're geared towards an artist or, a media producer or something like that. Like this one, to me, I think just has a lot of flexibility and could be used for a lot of different gameplay, and I think can easily be changed like to fit the aesthetic for your Sims. Like just adding, color, changing swatches and things like that, I think could also give the build a change of personality depending on who you have living here. And then it's just funny, those rugs, to me, they kind of remind me of a sun, like the little spokes going around. Like, I don't know, but I think it looked really nice here and just added something without, cluttering the space too much. And then up here, I tried to use like these like built showers, but I do end up swapping it out and just putting like one of the freestanding showers. I think the one technically from Snowy Escape is the one I used, and then putting up a wall with like a big window in it. So it's just funny because I was thinking, oh, I'll put a wall there and give you more privacy from like that window, but then I just put like a window inside of that wall. So like, not that it matters in The Sims, but it just like, I don't know, like I thought I was doing something and then like it just didn't work out that way. But I really am happy with the way the bathroom turned out. It just, privacy wise, is not exactly there. And just adding this sink in here, and then I wanted to use that from Spa Day, but the mirror was just too big. And then just adding a rug in here just for a little bit of pizzazz on the floor, and then just adding the robes, that's the word I'm looking for. And I love that like organizer that goes over the toilet, but I wish it had other swatches, because all the swatches I think have like a wood tone in it, and I just don't really have wood tones in this house. Like the only other place I can think of is in the kids' room. When we get there, I have like a really cool built-in like dresser area, so you'll see that, and I think it worked out really well. But there's just not a lot of wood tone here with those browns. But it's cool. I think it looks good there, and it just felt really empty without it. And for the owner suite, I really did have a hard time. I mean, I think it looked really awesome in the end, but it took me a while to get there. Like I originally started with all black wallpaper, and it was just too dark, and I started doing weird stuff with the bed. Like I tried to combine it with a couch to make it look like I had a cool headboard, and like, I mean, I had to like walk away and come back and try again. But this time it worked out, but I cut out all the crazy footage because like you don't need to see my indecisiveness all over the place. And then I ended up just adding the 2 mirrors on both sides, and then I end up adding like a skinny dresser on both sides as well, because I thought about putting a dresser like on that far wall and putting like a TV on it or something, but it was too much. It looked too big in that room. So I just used the 2 smaller ones, and then I end up using that like skinny entertainment center from Dream Home Decorator, which I think worked out really well. And then the last room here, almost the last room, because I almost forgot about that other bathroom when I was actually decorating. But this is the kids' room. This is the only room in the house that's got a pop of color, and that color is red. And so I got that bed, and I just like leaned into that accent color. And the rug, I've actually never used the rug before, but I think pulling in a little bit of blue, like it looked awesome. And then creating this like custom, like built-in closet space. And I end up having like 2 places to hang stuff up for like the 2 kids. And then we end up just putting a bunch of like clutter on them, like a bunch of toys and things like that. I did have them higher up because I felt like it filled the space better. But since they're kids, like it would need to be lower. And then just adding some shoes and, like I said, just a bunch of toys and things. And I think as they age up, you can definitely swap out like the toys and clutter that's in here. Because I imagine that they're both like kids at this stage, so not necessarily teens, but as they like become teens, you can swap stuff out. And there are 2 desks in here, so plenty of space to work on homework and all of that kind of stuff. And I don't put computers in here, but I feel like maybe when they become teens you might want to. So right now there's only 1 computer in the house, but I feel like usually you only need 1. Depending on your Sims careers and how many Sims there are, you probably don't need a bunch of computers unless you have multiple like writers or something like that. And then we do end up taking out that pile of pillows to the left of the chemistry set in the end, because I do put in a mirror in here also to act as a dresser. And just the scouting board to give them, again, just more stuff to do. And then we end up putting that like crafting table in here and just putting, again, some more stuff on the wall above their beds. So like some of their personal space. And I just feel like there's like just a bunch of stuff in here and it just looks like really fun and bright. And I was really happy with the way this turned out. It may actually be my favorite room in the house. This may actually be my favorite kid room I've ever made, just because I feel like it looks really awesome with all the color. And if it wasn't for doing the black and white color scheme and using that bed with the red, I probably would never have created this. So that was kind of fun. And just adding, like, I end up putting, I think, a poster on the wall. And then I do end up putting like that clutter piece on the floor. I do size it down and kind of push it under the bed so it doesn't take up that much room, because I feel like it's a lot of clutter on the floor. Like, it's a lot of mess, and I'm like, I don't feel like maybe these things were that messy. But anyways, and I do put the parenting board in here too, so you can set curfews and things like that on it. But if you don't have parenthood, you know, that can be taken out. And then just adding kind of some simple decorations out here. And as you can see, like, the white trim is missing here too, and I figure it out, I think, when I go to the other side of the house, when I finally finish up those balconies. But you can, I actually thought about putting an easel out here, but I opted not to since there's one inside. But that would be really cool if you do have a sim that's like into art. There's a nice view on the back of this lot. This is the Sandy Run lot in Newcrest, so I feel like there's like a lot of painting potential there if you would like to use that, or even if you're painting the backyard. I feel like, if I do say so myself, it's a really cool looking backyard, so painting that would be cool too. And then just kind of keeping it simple. I tried to put a bench out here, but it just didn't seem like it fit. And then I ended up swapping the plant in the seating area. Like, I like the idea of having the plant in front of the window, again, for like privacy, but it just didn't fit quite right in my opinion. So I just swapped that stuff around, and then I just added 2 chairs on that other balcony. And this is the point at which I realized, like, we have a problem, so I added that. Again, I feel like the bigger the house, the more likely you are to run into these issues of like architecture not working quite right. But I think it actually added a lot to the front, so I am happy with that. And then just kind of mimicking what we did in the backyard for that pergola, and just adding some greenery to the top here. And again, just kind of connecting them a little bit like they actually grew together. And then just doing that same thing in the backyard, adding those columns in here. And then I do actually go and finish that other bathroom, which I imagine is the kids' bathroom. So it does have splashes of red in there too. Like, I pulled some of that in there. So there's really only 2 places with the kids' stuff that you're going to see that color. But I think it turned out really well, and I put a little bit of like clothes on the ground. So like maybe, you know, again, just being like a little bit messy, and then pulling in that red curtain, but keeping it still pretty simple and not super cluttered. But we are reaching the end of the build, and we're going to have some awesome screenshots coming, if I do say so myself. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, again, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you have, thank you so much. And I hope you have a really sweet day. Bye, everybody.